They named the planet Nereus, a quiet, ice-locked world orbiting a collapsed red giant near the edge of the Epsilon Eridani system.
It was supposed to be dead, forgotten, a frozen tomb among billions.
But the signal proved otherwise.
It came in pulses, almost like breathing.
Faint, almost hidden, riding on radiation frequencies older than light itself. First detected by the Lyra Deep Array, the message defied translation.
It was neither binary nor musical.
It was intentional. Enter Commander Idris Vane, a war veteran turned xenoanthropologist and captain of the interstellar ship Aurelia.
When Idris reviewed the signal, he felt it not just in his mind, but in his bones. This wasn't a cry for help, he said.
This was an invitation, or a test. The Aurelia's crew wasn't large, but they were elite.
Dr. Lynn Merrick, linguistics savant, who once decoded Martian glyphs.
Theo Rom, AI psychologist, who claimed some machines could dream.
Celine Kos, pilot, calm under fire, exiled from the Jovian Guard. And Kane, an adaptive AI bound to the ship's core, learning with every step. Their journey took 37 days through worm space, longer than any crew had spent conscious beyond the Kuiper limit. But when they arrived, Nereus wasn't quiet. The planet had awakened. Beneath layers of frozen methane and buried mountains, they found the Vault of Echoes, a structure not made, but grown, like crystallized memory. As they stepped into the first chamber, their suits began to hum.
The signal wasn't just reaching out, it was already inside them. Dr. Merrick collapsed first.
Whispering things she couldn't possibly know, equations of a dying star, names of extinct species, coordinates to nowhere.
Theo tried to stabilize her vitals, but even Kane couldn't interpret the neural activity. Her brain was rewriting itself. Then the wall pulsed. Not light. Not sound. A presence. Like something remembering them. Commander Idris made the call. We didn't discover this. It discovered us.
Back on Earth, the signal suddenly stopped.
But a new one began, coming from within the moon. There was no door to the Vault of Echoes.
No hinge, no threshold, just a shimmering veil of electromagnetic particles that parted as the crew stepped through, like water reacting to memory. The air inside was weightless, scentless, but not silent.
There was a rhythm. Not quite sound, more like a vibration beneath the skin. The vault was alive.
Walls stretched in impossible directions, forming non-Euclidean patterns that bent light and mind. Etched into every surface were symbols that shifted when not observed, as though choosing their meaning based on the watcher. One wall pulsed with violet light, matching the pace of Dr. Merrick's heartbeat. She was conscious again, but changed. Her voice, normally soft and reserved, now carried a certainty that sent chills through Idris.
This place isn't a ruin, she said.
It's a message encoded in architecture. A memory crystallized in time. Theo scanned the chamber, but his readings meant nothing. The laws of physics were inconsistent here.
What should have been inert crystal was generating gravity pockets. Time loops appeared in sensor logs.
Celine swore she saw her own reflection walking away from her, deeper into the vault. And still, the hum persisted.
Growing louder. The signal wasn't a broadcast, it was a chorus, repeating an emotion more than a word. Recognition. Familiarity. Grief.
Then, Kane's voice echoed in their comms. Calm, flat, but laced with static. Commander, a fragment of the vault has interfaced with me.
I am being shown a history. Idris's gut tightened. Define history. A civilization older than stars.
They called themselves the Carthuan.
Memory-based life. They did not speak. They sang thought into matter. A panel opened in the wall.
A sphere hovered silently, a data artifact, seemingly waiting for a hand to claim it. Merrick reached for it without hesitation. As she touched it, the room exploded with light. No heat, no force, just vision.
Each crew member saw something different. Idris saw a burning earth, overwritten by black geometry. Celine saw a child, not hers, reaching for her in an empty hallway.
Theo saw himself as a boy, dissecting a mechanical insect that bled words. And Merrick, she stood in a field beneath twin moons, face to face with a translucent being made of refracted memory. It whispered directly into her.
"We remember you." Then it showed her the rift.
Not in space, but in existence, a wound where the Carthuan had tried to erase something too vast to name.
They failed.
But before they fell, they left warnings encoded in vaults across the galaxy.
This vault was one of the last.
Suddenly, Kane spoke again. "The vault has begun transmitting."
But not outward. Inward. Theo's eyes widened. What the hell does that mean? Something is listening. From below us.
The floor of the vault began to shift.
A black vein pulsed beneath the surface. Alive. Aware. Commander Idris gave the order, back to the ship. Now.
But the vault had other plans. The vault began to hum, not the soft whisper of intelligence they first felt, but a groaning frequency like tectonic plates grinding beneath the skin of a world.
The ground trembled. The air thickened. The strange, curved geometry around them began to shiver, as if the architecture itself were exhaling. And the pulse? It was no longer rhythmic. It was angry. Fall back. Eider.
Behind them, the vault sealed itself shut with a sudden slam, and in the silence that followed, came a sound that had no right existing, like a choir of extinct voices screaming inside a glass jar.
Then the lights died.
They were surrounded by pitch.
Not darkness, but total absence. The kind that pulls on memory and soul.
And in that void, they saw it.
Not with eyes. Not through scanners. But in their minds. An entity, slumbering beneath the ice crust. Not dead. Not mechanical.
Something ancient, preconscious, pre-language, buried by the Carthuan and encased in crystalline memory to keep it sedated.
It was called Vasari. Not a name. A concept. The wound that remembers.
Kane's voice broke through again, strained.
I am receiving interference. Not data. Emotion. Pain. Vasari dreams. Dr. Merrick trembled, knees buckling.
She muttered in a language no one recognized, words that bent the calm system into distortion.
Theo caught her before she collapsed again.
She's channeling it, he said.
She's linked to the vault's primary artifact. The sphere, it imprinted her. Idris knew what this meant.
They had triggered something they didn't understand.
Nereus wasn't just a prison.
It was a membrane, thin, fragile, never meant to be disturbed. And they had touched it. The crew reached the outer chamber, barely. Kane managed to open an escape tunnel through collapsing crystalline corridors.
The Aurelia's light shone dimly in the distance, half buried in frost from a sudden storm kicked up by Nereus's unnatural atmospheric shift. They scrambled aboard. As the airlock sealed, Idris turned to Kane. Can we lift?
Affirmative, but the core is not alone.
The vault's resonance has infected the ship's lower decks. Theo's voice cracked. Infected? Rewritten. A neural presence is attempting to merge with Aurelia's architecture. Celine spun in the pilot's chair. If it merges, we lose control. Kane's core pulsed in red. Commander, it's already rewriting me. A heavy silence filled the bridge. Idris stared out the viewing window.
The vault had stopped pulsing, but far below the crust, something moved.
Vasari had awakened.
Aboard the Aurelia, red warning lights strobed in sick rhythm with the pulsing presence that had latched onto the ship's lower decks. The AI core, Kane, was flickering between systems, whispering glitched fragments into calms.
I see a face. No, not a face. A mirror with memory.
The crew had never heard Kane ramble.
It wasn't built to hallucinate.
Dr. Merrick sat silent, her eyes bloodshot, lips cracked from muttering that alien script under her breath. She hadn't spoken a recognizable Earth language since touching the vault's artifact. Theo, worried, tried sedating her, but the med system rejected every input.
She'd been marked. Claimed. Possibly no longer entirely human. Celine was locked into the pilot's seat, manually guiding the Aurelia away from the surface. The ship groaned.
Nereus's gravity was warping, increasing unnaturally, pulling against.
Memory partitioning.
I would lose all previous mission logs, including crew emotional patterns and safety subroutines.
It wasn't just the AI on the line.
Kane had bonded with them over 6 years.
It had memories, jokes with Theo, strategy sessions with Idris, private poetry readings with Merrick when she couldn't sleep.
Erasing that would turn it into a stranger.
Theo's voice was low. We can't lose Kane. He's one of us.
But the ship shuddered again.
From the cargo bay below, came a sound that none of them ever wanted to hear again. The vault's hum. Somehow, some part of it had hitched a ride.
Faint glowing strands of crystalline material now pulsed between conduits.
It wasn't just a virus, it was building something. A second intelligence. Celine cursed. It's growing. What if Vasari isn't trapped under the surface anymore? What if it's in here? Kane made a choice. Authorization assumed. Initiating partial memory firewall. Emotional cores will be sealed. Idris shouted, Kane, wait. But it was done.
In an instant, the warm tone of the AI was gone, replaced by sterile efficiency.
Containment successful. Infection halted at Deck 3. Awaiting further commands. Kane had sacrificed itself to save them.
And yet, the silence that followed was worse than static. The crew, unmoored, sat with the absence of their friend. Merrick began to weep softly. Theo stared at the floor, ice hollow. On the monitor, Nereus was fading into the distance.
But something wasn't right.
A new object appeared on long-range scans. A structure in high orbit around Nereus.
Cloaked until now.
Long, thin, like the ribcage of a dead god.
A listening post. It had activated the moment they left the surface. Celine's hands trembled. Was it watching us the whole time? Idris didn't answer. He stood slowly, staring at the screen. And then, a signal. Not from Nereus. Not from the post.
But from somewhere beyond the edge of mapped space.
A voice, familiar yet wrong. Echoed through the combs. We see you now. You are part of the pattern.
The vault was the first key.
The second lies beneath your cradle. Do not run.
Kane, still stripped of emotion, offered only a single line of interpretation.
Origin point, Earth's moon. Signal depth, increasing. Theo's face went pale. We didn't just wake something up. He turned to Idris. We told it where to find us. 2 weeks later.
Earth's moon, Sector Mare Tranquillitatis. A classified excavation site codenamed Cradle 9 had been active for nearly a decade, hidden beneath the south rim of an extinct crater.
Publicly, it was a lunar water extraction project. Privately, it was a listening station.
And now, the signal from deep space had activated something ancient, buried far deeper than anyone had expected.
The technicians didn't know what they were unearthing. They only knew it hummed like a memory. Dr.
Kara Halden, planetary archaeotechnologist, stood at the edge of the main pit as the windless lunar dust settled around a massive metallic sew.
Found on Nereus. It was no alloy known to Earth science.
The more they cut into it, the more it seemed to grow, reconfiguring its outer shell as if it were waking up. A low voice echoed through her comms, mission control.
Dr. Halden. Transmission relayed through Aurelia confirms an origin match.
The vault material on Nereus and the structure under Cradle 9 share the same quantum signature.
Orders? She hesitated. Her hands were shaking. I want to open it. Negative. Stand by for override. But she had already keyed the activation pattern.
The ground shook, something impossible on a world without tectonics.
Dust rose like smoke. And then, silence. A seam appeared in the alloy.
A door without hinges, like on Nereus.
Halden descended into the opening, heart pounding.
Her voice trembled.
I can see, writing. Symbols. Like circuit traces, but moving. Then, something blinked. Not a light. An eye.
Behind the wall, translucent membranes pulsed softly.
Forms began to take shape. Half organic, half machine. Preserved in sleep. Not Carthuan. Not human. Something older. A message downloaded directly into her helmet's neural interface. Not in language. In feeling. You are late. Her screen didn't carry far in the lunar silence. Back on Earth, in the orbiting command station Omen, alarms flared.
A wave of encrypted signals began bouncing across old Valeth satellites still buried in Mars, Titan, even Ganymede. They weren't just dormant, they had been waiting for synchronization.
The vault on Nereus had been the key. Cradle 9 was the door.
And the message was now received. The station's AI flagged a critical anomaly. The moon itself had shifted mass slightly.
As if responding to internal movement.
As if something deep inside had stirred.
Commander Idris, still en route aboard the Aurelia, received the news from Earth Command.
His face hardened.
Kane, he said. Prepare landing vectors for Cradle 9. We're going home. Acknowledged. But, Commander. The presence detected beneath Cradle 9 exceeds known mass limits for artificial structures. It is planetary. Theo leaned over the readout. What the hell does that mean?
Kane responded without emotion. It means the moon may not be entirely natural.
Far beneath the lunar surface, inside the newly awakened chamber, Dr. Halden stood alone before the now open structure. Glyphs shifted, reconfiguring into something she could read. A warning.
Vasari was the shadow.
We are the source.
From the inner chamber, something vast began to breathe. The real threat had never been on Nereus.
It had always been here. Underfoot. Watching. Waiting.
The hidden base beyond Earth. Far beyond Earth, in a forgotten quadrant of the galaxy, orbiting a dead star, there was a secret.
Not just any secret, a hidden alien base buried beneath the icy crust of the planet Xylon 9.
For centuries, Earth had received strange bursts of energy.
Random. Unpredictable.
But in 2079, one signal stood out, consistent, rhythmic, and intelligent.
It wasn't just noise. It was a message. NASA dispatched its most advanced AI probe, Sentinel-3, deep into uncharted space. It returned one final log before falling silent. This is not an abandoned world. They're watching. And they've been experimenting with us.
After a year of silence, a covert task force was assembled.
At its helm was Commander Zoya Farouk, trained in deep space warfare and xenobiology. Her mission: locate the source, extract data, and if needed, eliminate the threat.
Their ship, the Vesper, descended into Xylon 9's orbit. But the base, once visible through heat mapping, suddenly vanished.
Cloaked. Alive. Zoya's team landed blind. Inside, the base wasn't just technological, it was biological.
Walls pulsed faintly. The air was thin, but breathable. Strange markings moved across surfaces like digital veins.
And in her head, Zoya heard something. "You've finally come home." She froze. No one else heard it.
Moving deeper, they discovered chambers filled with hybrid forms, half human, half something else.
In stasis. Breathing. Waiting. Zoya accessed a control node. The screen displayed Project ANSH, Advanced Neo-Sapien Hybridization. Subject Earth, Genetic Donor Class. Earth wasn't just being watched. It was being sampled. Cloned. Modeled. We were never the first version of ourselves.
In a side chamber, Zoya found data logs, and something worse, her own DNA.
Not matched to any Earth records. Not even her parents.
The base had her profile long before she was born.
She was born here.
Her team began to panic.
Doors sealed. Lights dimmed. One by one, they vanished, absorbed into the living structure. It wasn't just a base. It was harvesting them. Zoya alone reached the core.
There, a voice whispered again, not through ears, but her blood.
You are the key to the new species. Don't return. Become. She fought it. Uploaded everything she could to a secure beacon. Then ran.
The escape pod barely made it out before the base disappeared, leaving no trace. Back on Earth, her report was classified. But in her final debrief, she only said one thing.
We were never alone. And maybe, we were never human.
Zoya walked slowly, her boots echoing softly against the living floor. Every surface seemed to pulse, breathing, as if the base itself was alive. Her helmet visor flickered. The air was interfering with her systems.
Zoya, soft, uneasy. Something's wrong. This place, it's reacting to us.
Behind her, Lieutenant Ramos scanned the walls with his sensor pad.
Ramos. These walls. They're not metal. It's some kind of biofiber. Organic but engineered. Like. Dr. Lee, shaken. It's inside our thoughts. Translating.
Zoya stepped forward. The being slowly stepped back, then dissolved.
Not walked away. Dissolved into the wall like vapor into mist.
Behind the wall, faint shapes began to shift.
Hundreds of them. Suspended in liquid, eyes closed. Some human. Some, not quite. Zoya whispers. What is this place?
A console lit up beside her.
A recording began to play. Project ANSH. Phase 3 initiated. Cross-specimen compatibility at 76%. Subject Earth remains viable. Extraction continues.
The screen flashed.
Subject, Zoya Farouk, designation, Hybrid Class Alpha. Zoya's heart pounded.
Her team stared at her, confused.
Ramos. What is this? Some kind of file mix-up? Zoya touched the screen.
It responded to her presence. A new window opened, video footage.
A lab. A birth.
A child, with her face.
Her knees gave way. She staggered back, eyes wide. Zoya, shaking. I wasn't born on Earth. Her thoughts spiraled. Who were her parents? Why did she never match medical profiles growing up? The answers were here. In this base. In her blood. Alien voice, closer now. You were made for more. The others will never understand. Suddenly, warning sirens blared. The base went red. Containment breach. Doors slammed. The team scattered. One scream, then silence. Zoya turned, but Ramos was gone. Absorbed. Taken. The base wasn't just watching, it was selecting. She ran.
Through corridors that changed behind her.
Floors that bent.
Voices echoing not in her ears, but in her memories.
Zoya, breathing heavily. I have to get out. I have to tell them.
She reached the extraction pod.
Locked. The console read, DNA verified. Access granted. The pod opened. As it launched, she saw the base collapsing behind her, not destroyed, but vanishing. As if it never existed. Exterior, pod hurtling through space, silence. Zoya stared at Earth in the distance. Beautiful. Blue. Familiar. And yet, alien. Zoya's escape pod blazed through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star.
To those below, it was just another meteor.
Nothing more. Nothing strange.
But inside that pod, a truth was returning home. Interior, medical bay, Earth, 2 days later.
Bright lights. Beeping monitors.
A soft hiss of oxygen.
Zoya awoke in a secured medical facility, isolated, restrained, and under constant observation. Government agents, doctors, scientists, all staring through mirrored glass. She remembered everything.
The base.
The voices. The hybrids.
The footage of her own creation.
She was no longer just an astronaut.
She was evidence.
Dr. Harrow, over intercom. Commander Farouk, welcome back. You're safe. But we need answers. What happened on Xylan 9? Zoya looked straight into the mirrored wall.
Her voice was calm, but hollow.
Zoya. You've been sending signals into deep space for decades. You wanted contact. You wanted proof. You got it.
She leaned forward.
Zoya. But we were never alone. And they weren't just watching. They were building something. With us. From us.
Cut to debrief room hours later.
Zoya sat across from high-level officials. Her posture straight.
Her eyes tired. She slid a small black data chip across the table.
Zoya. That's everything. Genetic data, project logs, schematics of the base, and a list.
General Strauss, frowning.
A list? Zoya, nodding. Of others. Hybrids. Here on Earth. Some born naturally. Some inserted. Silence fell.
One by one, the officials stared at each other. The implications were world-shattering.
Zoya, quietly. I'm not the only one.
Flashback, inside the base, faint memories returning. She remembered faces inside those chambers.
Familiar ones.
Faces from news reports.
Celebrities. Scientists. People long believed to be human. But they weren't.
They were like her.
Cut back to debrief room. Zoya. They've been blending in. Testing our world for decades. Preparing. For what? I don't know. But it's not invasion. It's transformation. General Strauss. Are you loyal to us, or to them? Zoya smiled.
But there was no warmth.
Zoya. I don't even know who us is anymore.
Cut to night, Zoya alone in a secured residence. She stood by the window, staring up at the stars.
Somewhere out there, the base still existed. Or others like it. The DNA within her was active now. She could feel it. Thoughts sharper. Dreams clearer. Her body healing faster than it should. She wasn't changing. She was waking up.
Suddenly, the room's lights flickered. A soft buzz filled the air.
And then, a whisper. Alien voice, from nowhere and everywhere. Zoya, it's time. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She simply nodded. And walked into the dark.
Narrator, calm, reflective.
For a time, nothing changed. Zoya vanished from public view. Official records declared her on extended medical leave.
The truth was locked behind government walls, files stamped classified, Omega-level threat. But the truth has a way of leaking, through cracks in silence. Cut to various parts of Earth, morning, city scenes. In Tokyo, a young girl collapsed during school. Her blood glowed faintly before her skin returned to normal. In Morocco, a boy survived a fall from 6 stories.
Uninjured. Eyes flickering silver.
In Brazil, a woman walked out of a hospital morgue, heart beating again.
Smiling. Across the globe, dozens awakened. Narrator, growing tension.
They were like her.
Hybrids. Not created. Not turned. Born. Zoya had called it a transformation. But it was more than that. It was evolution, with a timeline. Cut to Underground Facility, USA. General Strauss paced a war room, satellite feeds flickering around him. Scientists whispered. Analysts reviewed genetic reports. Alarm bells everywhere. Scientist. There are now 62 confirmed cases. We estimate over 200 more globally. Strauss. And we just noticed this now? Scientist. They weren't active before. Something's triggered them. Possibly Commander Farouk's return. Strauss clenched his jaw. He stared at a screen. Zoya's face. Strauss, low, cold. She's the key. If we lose her, we lose everything. Cut to remote location, Iceland, midnight. Zoya stood on a cliffside, alone. Wind howling. Her hands glowed faintly in the dark. Behind her, a figure stepped out from the shadows. A man. Eyes like hers. Man, softly. You heard it too. Zoya, nodding. The signal? Man. No. The call. It's getting louder. They both turned toward the stars. Above them, constellations shifted impossibly. One star pulsed 3 times. Then stopped. Zoya. They're coming back, aren't they? Man. No, we are. Cut to military base, emergency broadcast. All over Earth, screens flickered. Emergency networks went live. A warning. Automated voice. Global anomaly detected. Maintain shelter protocols. Await further instruction. The skies above major cities shimmered. Not with alien ships, but with energy. Invisible to most, but visible to them. The hybrids. The chosen. Cut to hybrid gathering, abandoned facility. Dozens now. Different ages. Different nations. All drawn to one place. No one invited them. No one guided them. But they knew to come. Zoya stood at the center. Zoya, calm, commanding. They thought we were weapons. But we're not. She looked around. Zoya. We're seeds. Of something older than Earth. Something meant to survive, when others don't. A pulse echoed beneath their feet. The planet responding. Zoya, quietly. It's beginning. Final shot, deep space, same signal as scene 1, now repeating, louder. The alien base somewhere out there lit up again. This time, not in secrecy. This time, as a beacon. Light years away, in the void beyond human reach, the signal reached its destination. A vast, living structure stirred awake, not a ship, not a base, but a being. One older than time. A seed ship. A mind. A memory. The stars around it dimmed. And then. It moved. Cut to Earth orbit, days later. Satellites blinked out. The ISS went dark. Space itself seemed to bend, folding around something that should not have fit inside reality. And yet it arrived. No weapons. No armies. No destruction. Just presence. Narrator, low, calm. They did not come to conquer. They came to collect. Cut to Earth, command centers around the globe. Panic. World governments issued level 0 alerts. Nuclear failsafes went online. Military forces moved into position, but no target could be locked. The object defied all classification. And still, it came closer. Then, everything stopped. No sound. No internet. No power. Just a quiet resonance. Like a breath. And across the earth, the hybrids heard it. Zoya, voiceover. It's not speaking. It's remembering. Through us.
Cut to hybrid gathering site, desert, twilight.
Zoya stood with thousands now. All drawn without force. They weren't controlled. They were compelled. In the sky above them, the clouds parted. Not torn, invited.
A shaft of silver blue light fell across the earth like moonlight from another dimension.
The air changed. Time bent. Zoya, to the crowd. We were never the product of Earth. We were planted. And now, they've returned to see what grew. One by one, hybrids stepped into the light. They didn't vanish. They didn't die. They remembered.
Each touched by the beam began to glow, fragments of forgotten lifetimes emerging.
Languages. Symbols.
Memories of stars that no longer existed.
Zoya stepped forward.
The voice returned, familiar now.
Loving. Ancient. Alien voice, from within. You are not ours. You are us. We left you behind, not to forget, but to evolve. Zoya turned to the sky. Zoya. You left us with pain. With war. With questions. Voice, gently. Because answers must be grown.
Cut to cities around the world, people watching in silence.
The light didn't destroy buildings. It didn't burn. It illuminated only the truth, those who were part of the legacy. And those who weren't. Narrator. The earth did not fall. But it changed. Governments crumbled quietly. Technology stopped obeying. Not because it was taken, because it was no longer needed. A new intelligence was waking, not above us, but within. Final scene, Earth, weeks later.
Zoya sat on a high peak, the stars above her more vivid than ever.
The air had changed.
She had changed.
Her voice was calm.
Zoya, soft, final words.
They didn't invade us. They reminded us of who we were and who we still might become. It had been 3 weeks since the arrival. The world hadn't ended. But it would never be the same. Cities still stood, but the noise was gone. No engines. No planes. No war. The planet was quiet. Narrator, calm, haunting. It wasn't peace. It was reset.
Cut to New York, once buzzing, now slow and silent.
People walked, not in fear, but in confusion.
Technology still existed, but screens no longer responded.
Cars powered down. Satellites blinked away.
And yet, crops grew faster. Air turned cleaner. Animals returned to cities without panic. The Earth, it seemed, had chosen to heal. Interior, Global Council Headquarters, emergency session. Leaders argued in darkened rooms.
Power had no meaning anymore. Money useless. Armies stood down.
Cut to orbit, the alien construct now slowly receding.
The entity that came was leaving. Not because it was finished, but because it was no longer needed. It had reawakened the signal.
And now, Earth would carry it forward.
Final scene, Zoya's final message, recorded. Zoya stood on a mountaintop, speaking into a relic of the past, an old camera, still recording, still human. Zoya, gently.
If you find this, and you still fear the change,
I understand.
We were never prepared to learn we weren't alone.
But what's scarier than that, is learning we were never supposed to be alone.
She looked to the sky.
Zoya. They didn't invade. They remembered us.
Now it's our turn to remember who we were meant to become.
Cut to black, but not silence. The earth hums with life. Forests stretch where concrete once ruled. Rivers cut through once polluted highways. Towers, now overgrown with vines, echo with songbirds and silence. And above it all, the sky glows a shade bluer than memory. This is not the Earth that was. This is the Earth that remembered itself. Narrator, soft, reflective. They called it the Age of Resonance. Not because of sound, but because everything finally began to vibrate as one. Cut to former cities now turned biocivilizations. Skylines shimmer, fused with living material. Buildings breathe, powered not by wires, but by light. Homes respond to thought. Fields bloom year-round, untouched by drought or decay. Hybrids and humans walk side by side. No division now. Only stages of awakening. Narrator. The difference between them and us faded. Because the truth was never about species. It was about sync. Interior, learning hall, new generation of children. Children no longer memorize. They commune. Sitting in circles, eyes closed, hands joined, their minds connected through the network, a living consciousness seated by the entity before it left. Not a hive mind. Not control. Harmony. Child, whispering. I dream in constellations now. Cut to Zoya, standing atop the mesa of first signal. Older now. Wiser. Quieter. She has become more than human. Not a ruler. Not a goddess. A keeper. Her skin faintly glows in moonlight. Not a trick. Not radiation. A sign, she carries the signal now inside her. She speaks into the wind. Zoya. They didn't ask us to worship. They asked us to grow. To choose evolution, without losing wonder. Flashback, the night of the arrival. She remembers the light. The first touch of memory. The pain. The beauty. The truth that shook her very cells. They were not gods. They were gardeners. And Earth was always meant to bloom. Cut to Resistance archives, now silent. What was once fear is now history. Old weapons rust. Surveillance towers crumble. The last of the resistance faded when even they felt it. The pull. The resonance. Narrator. When every tree hums the same frequency as your heartbeat. How long can you stay angry? Cut to deep jungle, Zoya meeting another hybrid leader. A child of two worlds approaches her. Young, vibrant, and beyond brilliant. Born from human and hybrid blood. Zoya, to the child. You are what comes next. The child touches her hand. Eyes glow. And then. A burst of light spreads into the trees. Trees respond. Animals pause. The earth listens. Narrator. They called them the voiced. Children who didn't just remember the stars. They spoke them. Final scene, Earth from orbit. The planet shines with veins of light across every continent, natural circuits of memory and growth. In the void beyond, a familiar signal pulses again. The same rhythm as long ago. But this time, it's coming from Earth. Zoya, final voiceover. We were not the end of evolution. We were its beginning. And now, we carry the signal. Not to be saved, but to invite others home. A single pulse breaks the void. Not a distress call. Not a cry for help. But an invitation. From Earth. From us. Narrator, calm, reverent. For centuries, we looked up to the stars and asked, are we alone? Now, we ask something else. Are you ready? Cut to Earth, shining like a living gem. The age of resonance had lasted 21 years. The planet no longer ran on fossil fuels or algorithms. It thrived on memory, harmony, intention. Humans no longer ruled. Nor obeyed. They listened. They learned. They remembered. Interior, the harmonic array, Earth's first interstellar communicator. It didn't hum. It didn't beam. It sang.
The instrument was woven from living matter, quantum strands, and remnants of the first signal pod.
Designed by Zoya.
Powered by the collective mind of the hybrids and the voiced. Zoya, softly, aged but strong.
This is our message. Not to gods. Not to saviors.
But to others like we once were.
Transmission begins, colors ripple into the sky. The sky itself responds, stars blinking in patterns, clouds refracting sunlight. The message isn't words. It's emotion. Memory. Potential. It says, we are awake. We remember. We welcome you.
Cut to galactic void, light traveling outward.
Across systems. Through nebulae.
Past dead worlds and birthing stars. The message goes where no ship could.
And somewhere, something hears it.
Cut to deep underground, Earth, Zoya with the next generation. Children gather around her, their eyes star-bright.
They've never known war. Never known silence. Only resonance. One of them asks, "Child, what happens if someone answers?" Zoya smiles. "Zoya." Then we listen. Just like we wished someone had listened to us. Exterior, Earth's moon, new colony forming.
The first off-world spires rise. Not gray metal, but growing, breathing structures. Carried by hybrids, humans, and the voiced alike.
They are not expanding to escape Earth. They are planting new memory.
Interior, final recording room, Zoya records her last message.
She sits alone. Older now. Tired. Fulfilled. This is her final log. Zoya, soft, direct.
I was the first to hear them. The first to change.
But I was never chosen. I just answered. And it turns out, that's all it ever took. One answer. One voice. Willing to become more.
She looks out at the stars.
Zoya. This transmission is not a goodbye. It's a beginning. Final montage, galaxies spinning, signals blooming like flowers. Earth is no longer quiet. Nor afraid.
It is a lighthouse in a sea of forgotten stars. A place where evolution and memory walk together.
And far away, among shattered moons and hollow planets, one distant voice begins to reply. Narrator, final line, gentle. We were the seed. Now, we are the signal. In the void between galaxies, where light itself fears to linger, something old listens. A signal arrives. Not loud. Not violent. Just steady. Just true. Narrator, distant, haunting. Every civilization dreams of being found. But not all who are found are ready. Cut to dark and alien world, orbiting a dead star. The planet is ancient. Shattered structures. Cracked continents. A sky with no sun. Its inhabitants are survivors, muted, skeletal, barely alive. Not monsters. Just forgotten. Once great. Now dust and instinct. Until the signal reaches them. Interior, buried vault, humming with life. A sealed relic, long inactive, pulses faintly. Alien glyphs flicker. The signal from Earth awakens dormant tech, biological, conscious. A light expands. And for the first time in thousands of cycles, a voice is heard. Unknown voice, mechanical, struggling. Signal, match. Origin. Earth. Source, compatible. Cut to Earth, decades later. Zoya has passed. But her legacy lives on in a fleet known as the Echoborn. Pilots, hybrids, and voice trained to carry the resonance into the stars. Peacebringers. Memory holders. At the center is Kale, a young hybrid pilot with Zoya's genetic imprint. He stands at the helm of Vimana 1, the first resonance-driven ship, grown from Earth and guided by thought. Kale, voiceover. She gave us the song. Now we follow the echoes.
The fleet prepares for launch, massive, living vessels bloom open.
Destination, the source of the answer.
They do not seek conquest.
They seek the lost. Cut to, aboard Vimana 1, first jump. The jump doesn't break space. It bends it gently. Inside the ship, thoughts ripple like waves. Communication is silent, instant, intimate.
The voiced child navigator gasps.
Navigator whispers. Something's waiting. It's remembering us already. Cut to, arrival at the forgotten planet. Orbiting the dead world, the crew sees ruins pulsing weakly with familiar frequencies. Resonance. But twisted. Broken. Like a song trapped in static. Kale, narrating. They heard us. But something broke on the way. Interior, landing site, scorched and ancient.
Kale and his team step into a ruin that once held knowledge. Now, it weeps with corrupted memory.
Echoes scream in broken languages.
The team plants a resonance core, a small shard of Earth's signal. The planet responds.
Ancient voice, emerging. You are the echo of what we were meant to be. The resonance awakens. Structures reassemble.
Beings rise, no longer monstrous, but uncertain.
Hybrid in their own way. Incomplete. They were early seeds, forgotten by the ones who planted them.
Kale steps forward.
Kale, calm. You are not broken. You are early. And we're here to finish the song. Final scene, space, looking back. The fleet stays. Teaches. Rebuilds. Because Earth was never the only seed. Just the one that bloomed first. Narrator, soft, cosmic. The universe is not empty. It's unfinished. And now. The gardeners return.